In the days when kingdoms forgot whom they served, a man without a crown was born, who learned how to rule through fear. His name was Roderick. He promised order. He promised bread. He promised salvation. And the people believed. But promises became chains, laws became blades, and the throne, an altar of blood. For 20 winters the kingdom breathed in silence, until one moonless night the people remembered their voice, and the walls of the tyrant learned the meaning of the word freedom. Chapter 1. The Man Who Was Not a King. Roderick was not born in a palace. He was born in a narrow room above a warehouse where grain dust coated the walls and the smell of the river never fully left the air. The port district of Varkarn was loud, crowded, and endlessly moving. Sailors shouting, wagons grinding over stone, merchants arguing over weights and measures. It was the kind of place where a child learned early that no one was coming to save him. His father, Albrecht, was a clerk of the river customs, a minor official whose duty was to record shipments of wheat, salt, and timber as they passed through the docks. The job came with just enough authority to make him feel important, and just enough poverty to make him bitter. At night he drank and spoke of the king and the council with equal contempt. He called them thieves in fine robes. He said the kingdom was rotting from the top down. Roderick listened. By the time he was 10, he understood that power did not live in crowns or banners. It lived in ledgers, in keys, in the hands of men who decided what was allowed to pass and what was stopped. He watched ships held for days while bribes were negotiated. He saw soldiers escort wagons of grain past starving dock workers without slowing their march. He learned that rules bent easily when pressed by the right person. When Albrecht died of fever, no official came to the funeral. The kingdom had never known him. His widow was given a single month's wages and told to vacate the room above the warehouse. Roderick and his mother slept in a tannery for a season. She worked until her hands bled. He ran errands for merchants and dock captains, carrying messages and secrets too young to understand but old enough to remember. At 15, Roderick stopped being afraid. Fear, he realized, belonged to those who had something left to lose. He began to cultivate a different weapon: attention. He listened to men argue. He repeated their words at the right time to the right ears. He learned which captains cheated their crews, which officials skimmed tariffs, which guards drank on duty. He never accused, he only implied. And implication, he discovered, was more powerful than proof. By 20, Roderick had no title, no family name worth speaking, no land, yet men of standing greeted him with caution. They did not know exactly why. They only knew he always seemed to know more than he should. The kingdom of Valerath was already weakening. The old king had outlived his strength. The council quarreled endlessly over trade and borders. Noble houses raised private armies and called them guards. Taxes rose, roads decayed, and the countryside fed the capital until it could feed itself no longer. Roderick saw the cracks before anyone else, and when the cracks widened, he stepped into them.
Part 2. The winter that followed Albrecht's death was the coldest in a generation. Ice locked the river and froze the grain ships in place. Merchants cursed, sailors starved, and the dockside fires burned day and night as men tried to keep their blood from turning thick in their veins. The council declared emergency tariffs to stabilize prices. The result was immediate. Bread vanished from the lower districts. Roderick was 19. He spent those months moving between the taverns of the river quarter and the counting rooms of the Merchants' Guild, listening. A city in crisis always spoke too much. He learned which warehouses were still full, which ships were hoarding their cargo, which nobles were moving grain out of the capital at night to avoid new taxes. He found leverage everywhere. His first real act of influence came from hunger. A group of dock workers had gathered outside the eastern granary, demanding access to the stored wheat. The watch dispersed them with clubs. 2 men were killed. Their bodies were left in the street as warning. That night, Roderick walked into the back office of Master Kellen, the wealthiest grain broker in Varkarn. "You're moving wheat through the south gate," Roderick said calmly. Kellen's hand froze over his cup. "Who told you that?" the merchant demanded. "No one," Roderick replied. "I watched your wagons." He named the times, the routes, the guards who took payment to look away. He mentioned the captain of the watch, who would soon be accused of negligence by the council and might welcome information that improved his standing. Kellen listened. The next morning, bread appeared in the river quarter. The city noticed. Not the council, not the nobles, the people. Word spread that some unknown hand had forced the grain back into the streets. The name Roderick followed, half spoken, half guessed. He did not deny it. He did not confirm it. He allowed the rumor to grow on its own. Within weeks, men came to him for help. Sailors whose wages had been withheld. Shopkeepers ruined by sudden tariffs. A minor noble whose cousin was being squeezed by the council for political reasons. Roderick never promised justice. He promised solutions. By spring, he had built a web of obligations across half the city. Nothing written, no titles, only favors and debts, balanced carefully in his mind. Then the old king collapsed. The council hid the news for 3 days while they argued about succession. The streets, already thin with hunger and anger, began to rumble. The watch doubled its patrols. The nobles fortified their estates. On the 4th night, Roderick gathered the men who owed him most. He did not speak of crowns. He spoke of order. And for the first time in his life, the city listened to him. Chapter 1. The Man Who Was Not a King. Part 3. The 4th night after the king's collapse, the city of Varkarn did not sleep. Torches burned in the lower districts. The river quarter echoed with shouts. Somewhere near the old tax hall, a watch patrol was surrounded and forced to flee. No single leader commanded the unrest, but many eyes had begun to turn toward one man. Roderick moved through the streets as if he had always belonged there. He did not carry a weapon. He carried names. At each gathering, he spoke quietly with the men who had already learned to trust him. Dock captains, guild runners, 2 junior officers from the watch whose loyalty was more practical than noble. He passed instructions without raising his voice. Hold the bridge. Close the south gate. Keep the grain wagons moving. The city responded. When the council finally attempted to address the people from the western balcony, they were met with stones and curses. The watch refused to clear the square. half their number removed their crests and stepped aside. By dawn, the council hall was surrounded. Roderick entered through the rear passage, guided by a clerk who once carried messages for him. Inside, the remaining counselors argued in panicked whispers. None of them noticed him until he stood at the center of the chamber. He did not threaten them. He presented a list. Names of guards who had been bribed, names of merchants hiding grain, names of nobles already preparing to flee the city. "Order has collapsed," Roderick said calmly. "The streets will tear this place apart before nightfall. I can stop it." One counselor laughed. "You have no authority." Roderick looked at him. "I have the city." By noon, the council surrendered its seals. By sunset, Roderick stood on the steps of the Western Plaza and addressed the largest crowd Varkarn had seen in decades. He promised bread. He promised protection. He promised that no child would starve while he still breathed. The people roared, and in that roar, the old kingdom of Valarath ended. Chapter 1. The Man Who Was Not a King. Part 4. By the next evening, the city had already chosen him. No decree named him king. No crown touched his head. Yet every gate answered to his word. Roderick did not seek the throne hall. He remained in the Western Plaza, where the people could see him. He ate what they ate, slept in a merchant's loft with no guards at the door. When the council's banner was pulled down from the old tower, he did not replace it. He let the pole stand bare, a message to every house in the city. The old order was finished. On the second night, the nobles attempted their answer. House Marrow sealed its gates. House Huldren withdrew its men from the city watch. House Virel sent riders south, calling for private armies. Roderick responded before dawn. He ordered the south gate closed. He seized the river barges that carried arms out of the capital, and he summoned the 3 houses to the plaza. They did not come, so he went to them. At House Marrow's estate, the outer gate was barred. Roderick did not command the men with him to force it. He commanded the people. Within minutes, the street was full. Stones shattered windows. Servants fled. When Lord Marrow finally emerged, pale and shaking, Roderick spoke only one sentence. "Open your storehouses." By midday, grain flowed into the lower districts. The people cheered his name. At House Huldren's barracks, he offered the soldiers amnesty and wages from the royal treasury if they returned to the watch. More than half accepted. At House Virel's gate, he found resistance. Virel's guards raised spears. Roderick did not retreat. He stepped forward. "Lower them," he said. They did not. He nodded once. The men beside him moved. Steel flashed. Blood struck the stone. When it ended, the gate stood open, and Virel's crest lay broken beneath Roderick's boot. That night, the city learned its first hard lesson. Roderick's promises would be kept, but they would be paid for. By the following morning, no noble house remained openly defiant. The council was gone. The watch was his. The granaries were open, and the people were chanting one word in the streets: Roderick. He stood at the edge of the plaza as the sun climbed above the rooftops, listening. For the first time in his life, the world was silent when he raised his hand. That was the moment he understood the truths he would never again escape. He was no longer merely a man. he was becoming the kingdom. Chapter 2. The Promise to the People. Part 1. The first week of Roderick's rule passed without ceremony. No coronation, no blessing of priests, no procession through the ancient gates. The kingdom changed anyway. At dawn each day, notices appeared across the city, written in a steady hand, stamped with a new seal, a circle of iron without crown or crest. The mark of order, the people soon called it. The first decrees were simple. All grain stores within the capital were opened. Prices were fixed. Debts to the council were erased. The city watch was reformed and sworn directly to the new authority. And beneath every order was the same line: by the will of the people of Valerath. The effect was immediate. Bread returned to the tables of the poor. Fires burned again in hearths long gone cold. For the first time in years, the river docks worked without bribes changing hands at every gate. Roderick walked the streets each day, speaking with merchants, farmers, dock workers, soldiers. He learned their names. He remembered their faces. He asked what they needed, and when he could give it, he did so publicly. Hope grew fast in hungry soil, but hope is dangerous. In the old council chamber, Roderick stood alone one evening, staring at the great map of the realm carved into the floor. The kingdom of Valerath spread before him. Fields, rivers, mountain passes, ports. He saw not beauty, he saw fractures. The north was starving. The west was near rebellion. The southern lords were already gathering armies in secret. The city was calm, but the kingdom was not. That night he summoned the first gathering of his new court, captains of the watch, leaders of the guilds, representatives from the dock unions, 3 lesser nobles who had bent the knee early, and 2 men whose loyalty he had purchased with secrets rather than gold. They stood in a circle where the old council once ruled. "We will not survive this winter unless the countryside believes in us," Roderick told them. "The people of the capital already do." One of the captains frowned. "They believe because they are being fed." Roderick nodded. Exactly. The promise was not only bread. The promise was belonging. The next morning, messengers rode in every direction carrying copies of Roderick's proclamation. The old crown has fallen. The people now rule their own fate. No child of Valerath shall starve while this government stands. The countryside listened. For a time, the kingdom believed. Chapter 2. The Promise to the People. Part 2. The countryside did not rise all at once. Belief never does. It crept. Caravans began arriving from the east again, guarded by banners marked with the new seal of order. Farmers who had hidden their grain brought it cautiously into market towns. In the north, a dozen villages swore public loyalty to the new regime after Roderick's envoys negotiated the lowering of old debts. For a brief season, Valerath breathed. But the deeper Roderick's promise reached, the more it demanded in return. By mid-autumn, the southern lords sent their answer. House Kestrel closed its mountain passes. House Vero refused to remit taxes. House Calderon raised 3,000 men and claimed the old crown's authority. Roderick summoned his court. He did not hesitate. "Seize their supply lines," he ordered. "Cut their rivers. Starve them until they remember who they serve." One of the guild elders hesitated. "The people will suffer." Roderick met his eyes. The people already suffer. We decide who suffers more. The campaigns were swift and brutal. Villages that aided the southern houses were fined, stripped of grain, and left with winter's edge approaching. Refugees poured north. The city's gates strained to contain them. In the capital, the people still cheered his name. Outside it, they whispered another, tyrant. Roderick did not hear the word, or rather, he heard it and chose not to believe it. Chapter 2. The Promise to the People. Part 3. The first public execution of the new regime took place at the Western Gate. It was not announced. That, Roderick believed, made it more effective. 3 men were brought at dawn, hands bound, coats torn, faces hollow with exhaustion. They were merchants from the southern road, accused of smuggling grain to House Calderon and spreading seditious rumors in the countryside. The charge was read once. No trial followed. Roderick stood on the stone steps above them. He had not intended to be there, but when he learned the crowd had gathered in silence around the gate, he decided the moment required his presence. Power, he had learned, was most secure when it was seen. Valerath lives because its people believe in it, he said. Those who undermine that belief undermine every child who sleeps tonight with bread in their belly. The sentence was carried out before the sun cleared the rooftops. The crowd did not cheer. They did not speak. They went home. By evening, the whispers had changed. Hope did not vanish that day, but something inside it cracked. Roderick returned to the council chamber and stood alone before the map. He told himself this was necessary. He told himself no kingdom had ever been built without blood. He told himself the people would understand because the grain still flowed and the city was still safe. Outside, the watch expanded its patrols. Names were written, doors were marked. The promise had been kept, but it had become something else. Chapter 2. The Promise to the People. Part 4. Winter came early. Frost crept across the lower districts and turned the river's edge into a blade of ice. The city was fed, but it was no longer warm. Fires burned behind shuttered windows. Voices dropped when the watch passed. The squares that had once roared with Roderick's name now held only the scrape of boots and the hiss of wind between stone. Roderick noticed the change. He told himself it was discipline. He told himself that obedience always arrived before prosperity. In the weeks that followed, he reshaped the city with law. Curfews were established. Travel permits required a seal from the Iron Court. The watch received authority to detain without warrant. Informants were rewarded with coin and protection. Trials became brief. Sentences became final. Yet the granaries stayed full. The roads were safer. The markets functioned. Roderick walked the city less now. When he did, guards surrounded him. The people bowed, not with gratitude, but with care. He no longer heard their laughter. He heard the sound of a realm learning how to survive him. One night, standing on the balcony above the Western Plaza, he watched snow fall onto the stones where he had first spoken to the crowds months earlier. The same place, the same city, a different world. For the first time, the thought entered him with terrifying clarity. If I fall now, everything I built collapses with me. So he hardened his rule. The promise had saved the kingdom. Now the kingdom would be made to endure it. Chapter 3. The First Decrees. Part 1. Roderick's reign truly began the morning the bells of Varkarn rang without prayer. No priest had summoned them. No holy day marked the sound. They rang because the old laws were being buried. At sunrise, couriers nailed the first royal decrees to every gate, bridge, guild hall, and market wall. Thick parchment, heavy seals, the mark of the Iron Court pressed deep into the wax. People gathered to read. The first decree stripped the noble houses of independent levies. All armed forces within the capital were placed under the crown. Any who refused would be declared enemies of the realm. The second seized the river tolls. No merchant would pay coin to any house but the throne. The third dissolved the last remaining provincial councils and replaced them with appointed governors loyal only to Roderick. The fourth outlawed private trials, private prisons, and private justice. By noon, the kingdom no longer resembled the one that had crowned him. Inside the citadel, Roderick stood before the assembled captains of the watch, the guild elders, and the newly appointed governors. Maps covered the stone table. Lines of ink bled across the countryside. "This is the moment we stop ruling a city," he said, "and begin ruling a realm." One of the elders shifted uneasily. "The nobles will resist." "They already are," Roderick replied. He issued the next commands without hesitation. "Close the southern passes, seize the grain reserves of House Calderon, disarm the retainers of House Varro, arrest Lord Hethrin before dusk." The court hesitated only once. "Lord Hethrin has not rebelled," a captain said. Roderick's gaze hardened. "He will." By nightfall, the city watch dragged Hethrin from his estate and marched him through the western gate in chains. His property was seized, his household scattered, his banners burned. The city watched in silence and learned. Chapter 3. The First Decrees. Part 2. The nobles did not resist with swords at first. They resisted with letters. Riders left their estates at dusk and rode through the night carrying sealed messages to cousins, in-laws, distant bannermen. Old alliances were awakened. Debts were called in. Quiet meetings took place behind shuttered windows, where wine was poured but rarely touched. Roderick knew. He always knew. His informants moved through the great houses as servants, tutors, grooms, and clerks. Every whispered plan arrived at the Iron Court before it was complete. He read the reports each evening by lamplight, memorizing names, patterns, weaknesses. By the third week of his reign, the South was in open defiance. House Calderon closed the mountain road and refused all shipments of grain. House Varro fortified its river crossings. 3 lesser houses declared their loyalty to the true traditions of the crown and began raising men. The kingdom had drawn its first real breath of war. Roderick summoned the governors and captains again. "We move now," he said, "before their courage grows." Troops marched south under the new banners, not with trumpets and ceremony, but with speed. They seized bridges at dawn, took supply wagons before breakfast, and by nightfall had cut the rebel houses from one another. Villages that resisted were fined. Those that aided the crown were rewarded with protection and bread. The message spread quickly. Obedience meant survival. Resistance meant ruin. In the capital, the people began to understand that the peace they enjoyed was being purchased elsewhere, with blood, with hunger, with the slow crushing of the countryside. Some spoke of it. Most did not. Roderick received reports of burned fields and emptied granaries. He approved each action with steady hand. He told himself that this suffering was temporary, that once the realm was unified, prosperity would follow. Yet the map on his table was changing color, red lines creeping outward, marking the cost of order. And deep inside, a quiet certainty began to take shape. He could no longer build this kingdom without breaking it. Chapter 3. The First Decrees. Part 3. The first true betrayal came from inside the Iron Court. Lord Avonheart had knelt to Roderick in the Western Plaza, sworn loyalty before the crowd, and accepted a governorship in the eastern provinces. For 2 months, his reports were flawless. Roads repaired, grain moving, villages pacified. Then his letters stopped. 3 days later, a messenger arrived, half dead on a bleeding horse, carrying a single scrap of cloth. Avonheart's banner, cut from the gate of the fortress of Greywatch. Avonheart had declared himself King of the East. Roderick did not rage. He closed the doors of the court and studied the map in silence. When he spoke, his voice was calm. Burn Greywatch, hang Avonheart from his own wall. The generals hesitated. That fortress holds 5,000 civilians. Roderick met their eyes. It will not hold rebellion. The campaign lasted 6 days. On the 7th, smoke rose above the eastern hills, visible even from the capital's highest tower. Refugees poured west. The last of Avonheart's men were executed at the gates of Varkarn, before a crowd that no longer protested, no longer whispered. They watched. Roderick stood among them. In that moment, he understood something the old kings never had. Fear is not the enemy of loyalty. Fear is its foundation. When night fell, the city was silent. The first decrees had reshaped the realm, and the realm at last had learned who ruled it. Chapter 4. The Price of Order. Part 1. The first winter under Roderick's rule was the most orderly winter Valerath had known in decades, and the coldest. Snow fell early across the northern plains and did not melt. Roads remained open, patrolled by the new Royal Guard. Grain convoys moved on strict schedules. No bandits roamed the highways. No private armies blocked the passes. The realm, for the first time in years, worked. The people noticed. In Varkarn, markets were full. The price of bread remained fixed. Crime in the lower districts dropped sharply as curfews and patrols tightened the city's grip. Merchants praised the stability. Guilds recorded profits not seen since the old king's youth. Roderick received the reports each night. He approved new warehouses. He expanded the guard. He ordered the construction of border forts. Order was spreading. So was something else. From the countryside came different messages. Farmers complained of impossible quotas. Villages in the east sent word that entire harvests had been seized for the crown's armies. Northern hamlets reported that young men were being conscripted without notice and marched south, never to be seen again. Roderick read these letters without expression. The generals warned him that the campaigns against the southern houses had drained the treasury faster than expected. Rebuilding the roads and garrisons demanded more grain, more silver, more men. "There is no peace without strength," one of them said. Roderick agreed. New levies were ordered. In the capital, the people still ate. In the countryside, they began to starve. The first protest came from the town of Haldenridge. 300 farmers marched to the provincial seat, carrying their children and their empty sacks. They demanded relief from the winter quotas and the return of their seized grain. The governor sent for instructions. Roderick considered the message for a long time. Then he wrote only 2 words: disperse them. The governor did more than that. By nightfall, 7 farmers lay dead in the square. The rest fled into the fields. Haldenridge fell silent. The message reached Varkarn within days. Some in the city murmured. Most said nothing. All understood. Order they were learning did not negotiate. Chapter 4: The Price of Order. Part 2. By midwinter, the prisons were full, not of criminals, of farmers, of teachers, of town speakers, of men who had simply asked too many questions. Roderick authorized the construction of 3 new holding compounds outside Varkarn. Officially, they were administrative facilities. The people called them what they were: camps. The watch gained new powers. Houses could be entered without warrant. Gatherings of more than 10 were prohibited. Traveling between provinces now required stamped permits issued only by the Iron Court. The realm obeyed. It was not because the people had changed. It was because they were learning what happened when they did not. In the north, a village called Feldren refused the winter levy. The soldiers arrived at dawn. By nightfall, the village was ashes. The survivors were marched south and scattered among other towns, their home erased from the map. The report reached Roderick's desk 2 weeks later. He approved the commander's actions. He did not sleep that night, but he did not reverse the order. In the following months, the kingdom grew quiet, too quiet. Markets were full, roads were safe. The war in the south was nearly over, and yet laughter vanished from the streets. Children stopped playing in open squares. The city learned how to breathe carefully. One evening, Roderick stood alone in the old council chamber and studied the kingdom map. The borders were secure. The rebels were broken. The realm had never been more unified. He whispered to himself, not in pride, but in something close to fear. I saved it. And in doing so, he had begun to destroy it. Chapter 4: The Price of Order. Part 3. The resistance did not announce itself. There were no banners, no speeches, no open calls to arms. It began with silence. Tax wagons failed to arrive. Bridges were found burned in the night. Messengers vanished on familiar roads. At first, Roderick believed it was coincidence, the aftershocks of war, the exhaustion of a long winter. But the pattern sharpened. Entire routes went dark. Patrols returned with nothing but rumors. Somewhere in the western highlands, men were moving unseen. Roderick ordered expanded sweeps. Villages were searched. Hills were scoured. Suspected sympathizers were detained. The resistance answered with fire. A garrison near Torhaven was found slaughtered at dawn, its banner nailed upside down to the gate. In the south, a supply depot burned for 3 days. Along the river, grain barges were sunk in the dead of night. The kingdom felt the tremor. In the capital, Roderick's advisors urged caution. The people are afraid, one said. Too much pressure will fracture the realm. Roderick stood at the window and watched the city below. ordered, silent, obedient. "They are already fractured," he replied. "They just don't know it yet." He authorized a new command: total compliance. Any village that failed to meet quotas would lose protection. Any town that harbored insurgents would be relocated. Any family suspected of aiding rebels would be removed. The resistance did not stop. It grew. And for the first time since taking power, Roderick understood a truth no tyrant ever wishes to face. Fear rules the present, but it plants the seeds of the future. Chapter 5: The Iron Crown. Part 1. The coronation was delayed until the realm could no longer pretend it was unnecessary. For nearly a year, Roderick ruled without a crown, without blessing, without ceremony, and the kingdom obeyed him all the same. Yet the wars had ended, the southern houses were broken, and the borders were sealed. The realm was stable. The generals wanted a symbol. The governors wanted legitimacy. The people wanted something they could point to and name. They wanted a king. The High Temple agreed to the right after a week of negotiations conducted behind locked doors. The priests demanded protection for their lands and exemption from the new levies. Roderick granted both. Faith, he had learned, was another kind of army. The ceremony was held at the Iron Citadel on the first clear day of spring. The city did not celebrate. The bells rang, but without joy. The streets were clean, the windows closed, the squares lined with guards whose armor reflected the pale light like frozen water. The people gathered because absence would be noticed. Inside the great hall, nobles who had survived the purges knelt beside governors and generals. The priests brought forth the crown, forged not of gold, but of darkened steel, heavy and unadorned, its surface etched with the old laws of the realm. The Iron Crown. Roderick knelt. When it was placed upon his head, the hall fell completely silent. He did not smile. He felt the weight immediately, not just of the metal, but of everything it represented. The villages burned, the men hanged, the children starving in distant valleys so that the capital could eat. When he rose, King Roderick of Valerath no longer belonged to himself. That night, from the highest balcony of the citadel, he looked down upon the city and understood that the crown was not a reward. It was a sentence. Chapter 5: The Iron Crown. Part 2. The morning after the coronation, the first edict of King Roderick was issued. Not about war, not about taxes, about memory. All public records referring to the former council were ordered sealed. The old royal sigils were destroyed. The chronicles of the past reign were to be rewritten under the supervision of the Iron Court. Any unauthorized account of the transition of power would be considered sedition. History itself was being brought under law. In the provinces, statues of the old king were pulled down and replaced with new stone pillars bearing Roderick's crest. Schoolmasters received revised lessons. Children were taught that the realm had been saved from chaos by a man who had heard the people's voice. Roderick read the reports without expression. He knew what he was doing. He knew he could not rule the future unless he ruled the past. In the capital, the watch expanded again. New ranks were created. The network of informants doubled. Lists grew longer. The prisons filled faster. Yet the realm remained stable. Trade flourished. Roads were safe. Foreign envoys returned. eager to negotiate with a kingdom that had finally ceased tearing itself apart. Roderick welcomed them with measured courtesy and hidden knives. In the Western Highlands, however, the resistance did not vanish. They called themselves the Free Banner. They struck at patrols, freed prisoners, burned levy offices. Their leader remained unknown, but their symbol, a white standard slashed with black, appeared wherever the crown's grip tightened. Roderick ordered the banner hunted. The hunt did not end, and slowly word of the Free Banner began to spread among the villages. Hope, once crushed, was stirring again. Chapter 5, The Iron Crown, Part 3. Roderick chose the Valley of Ashmere as the lesson. The Free Banner had struck 3 times in that region, ambushing a patrol, freeing prisoners from the provincial jail, and burning the levy hall. The villages there were poor, isolated, stubborn, perfect. The generals advised caution. Roderick refused. He ordered a full encirclement. At dawn, 5,000 soldiers surrounded Ashmere. No warning was given. No terms were offered. Every road was sealed. Every river crossing guarded. By midday, the soldiers began their march into the valley. Houses were searched. Men were seized. Grain was confiscated. Livestock slaughtered where it stood. The villagers were driven into the central square and forced to watch as suspected. Sympathizers were dragged forward. The commander asked for final instruction. Roderick, watching from the hill above, raised his hand. The executions lasted until sunset. By nightfall, Ashmere was silent. Smoke rose for 3 days. The message was unmistakable. The Free Banner did not strike again that season. In the capital, the people did not speak of Ashmere aloud. They did not need to. The Iron Crown no longer belonged only to Roderick. It belonged to the kingdom. Chapter 6. When Fear Became Law. Part 1. The winter after Ashmere, the kingdom stopped pretending. There were no more speeches about unity. No more proclamations about the people's will. Only orders. Roderick formalized the system that had already taken shape in shadow. The Edicts of Preservation, they were called. A set of laws granting the Iron Court authority over speech, movement, and assembly. Any gathering of more than 6 required written permission. Travel between provinces demanded stamped papers. Possession of banned texts became a crime against the realm. The Watch transformed into something else. New uniforms, new ranks, new oath to the crown alone. They patrolled every district. They kept lists. They questioned at dawn and returned at night with wagons of the accused. Trials were brief, conducted behind closed doors. Verdicts posted the next morning. The prisons overflowed. Roderick walked the city only at night now, surrounded by steel and torchlight. He did not look at the people. He watched the streets. He told himself this was necessary, that the realm was sick and medicine was bitter, that Ashmere had saved thousands by terrifying millions. In the north, villages that had once whispered the name of the Free Banner now whispered only prayers. The resistance was wounded, but it was not dead. Chapter 6. When Fear Became Law. Part 2. By spring, the kingdom functioned like a machine. Taxes arrived on time. Roads were silent and safe. No banners, but Roderick's flew over any wall. And yet, something was rotting. Roderick felt it in the silence of the halls. in the way his captains avoided meeting his eyes, in the way petitions were no longer written with hope, but with terror. The people no longer asked him for help. They begged him for mercy. Each week, the Iron Court reviewed the lists: arrests, confiscations, relocations. Each week, the numbers rose. The generals warned him that fear, once unleashed, devoured even those who commanded it. Roderick dismissed them. "The realm has never been more stable," he said. That same night, a boy of 16 was brought before the court, a messenger's son, accused of carrying a verse of rebel poetry in his coat. The sentence demanded by the new laws was death. The chamber waited. Roderick looked at the boy. For a moment, something old stirred in him. The memory of hunger, of cold rooms above the river, of a city that once ignored him. Then the crown's weight pressed down again. "Carry out the sentence," he said. The boy was hanged at dawn, and the last fragile piece of the man Roderick had been disappeared with the sunrise. Chapter 6. When Fear Became Law. Part 3. After the boy's execution, the city did not sleep for 3 nights. Not because of riots, not because of rebellion, because of silence. The taverns closed early. The lamps were dimmed behind shutters. Even the river seemed to move more slowly, as if the water itself had learned caution. Mothers kept their children inside. Fathers spoke in whispers. The watch noticed the change and tightened patrols, mistaking quiet for weakness. Roderick felt the change as well. He began to dream. In his dreams, he stood again in the river quarter, barefoot on cold stone, watching grain wagons roll past hungry men. But now the wagons bore his seal. His face was stamped on the sacks. The people in the dream did not look at him with hatred. They looked at him with emptiness. He woke before dawn most mornings, the Iron Crown's imprint still aching across his brow, though it lay on its stand across the chamber. He spent long hours alone with the maps, moving pieces that no longer represented armies or towns, but consequences. Reports arrived from the provinces. In the West, entire families were vanishing into the forests rather than submit to relocation. In the North, a preacher had begun speaking of a day of breaking when the kingdom would shatter under its own weight. In the East, border guards intercepted letters bearing the mark of the Free Banner, the first in months. The resistance was breathing again. Roderick ordered new sweeps, new arrests, new confiscations. The court obeyed, but the kingdom was changing faster than his decrees could shape it. One evening, as snow melted into the gutters of Varkarn, Roderick stood on the citadel balcony and realized the truth he had spent a year refusing. He no longer ruled the people, he ruled their fear. And fear, he now understood, was the most unstable foundation any throne could stand upon. Chapter 7. The Hunger of the Kingdom. Part 1. The hunger returned in the 3rd summer of Roderick's reign, not in the capital, not where the crown could see it. It crept through the provinces like a quiet disease. The wars had drained the countryside. The quotas had emptied the granaries. Villages that had once endured out of fear now endured because they had no choice. The soil was exhausted. The men were gone, conscripted, executed, or hiding in forests that could no longer feed them. The first reports were ignored. Then the refugees arrived. Caravans of families moved toward the cities, thin and hollow-eyed, carrying everything they owned on broken carts. The watch turned them away. The gates remained closed. Outside the walls, camps formed from torn cloth and branches. Disease followed. Roderick's ministers warned him the realm could not survive another winter like this. He listened and ordered new levies. The armies still needed grain. The garrisons still needed men. The roads still needed patrols. If the crown weakened now, the free banner would rise again. So the countryside bled. In the capital, bread remained cheap. The people saw nothing until the river stopped bringing boats. Chapter 7. The Hunger of the Kingdom. Part 2. When the barges failed to arrive, the markets of Varkarn noticed first. Then the bakers. Then the watch. By the time Roderick was informed, the city had already begun to change. Bread doubled in price in 3 days. Meat vanished entirely. The poorer districts grew thin and restless. Children returned to the streets. The camps beyond the gates swelled. Fever crept along the river's edge. Roderick summoned the governors. The northern provinces were starving. The western fields had burned. The south had hidden what little remained. The generals demanded immediate requisition. The ministers begged for restraint. Roderick ordered both. Grain was seized from remaining stores. New patrols were deployed to crush riots. The watch cleared the camps beyond the walls with clubs and steel. The people saw it all. They did not rise. Not yet. That night, the first riot broke out near the East Granary. It was small. It was crushed. But the sound of it carried. Chapter 7. The Hunger of the Kingdom. Part 3. The second riot was larger. It began at dawn in the river quarter, when a convoy of grain wagons attempted to cross the old stone bridge under heavy guard. A woman stepped into the road holding a child, too weak to cry. The soldiers tried to move her. The crowd closed in. Stones flew. The wagons burned. By noon, the river quarter was in open revolt. The watch responded with force. The eastern garrison was deployed. Bodies lined the street by nightfall. The fires did not go out. When Roderick was informed, he did not hesitate. He ordered the gates sealed. No one was allowed to leave. No one was allowed to enter. The city had become a cage. By morning, whispers of rebellion filled the lower districts. Old symbols reappeared on walls, crude white banners slashed with black. The free banner had returned. Roderick stood at the citadel window and watched the smoke rising from his city. The hunger had done what fear could not. It had awakened the people. Chapter 8. The Walls Have Ears. Part 1. The city became a prison within a week. Every gate sealed, every street patrolled, every tavern shuttered. The watch moved in pairs, then in groups of 5, then in armed columns. Lists were posted. Names were read aloud at dawn. Families vanished in the night. The Iron Court worked without rest. Interrogations ran until morning. Confessions were forced. Executions were conducted at dusk. The people learned the new rhythm of the city. Silence at sunrise, smoke at noon, fear at night. Roderick ordered the construction of gallows in every major square. Not because they were always needed, because they were always seen. The free banner spread through the lower districts. Secret meetings formed in cellars and under broken bridges. Messengers moved through the sewer tunnels. Songs were whispered behind locked doors. The walls were listening. So were the people. Chapter 8. The Walls Have Ears. Part 2. The interrogations began to fail. Men confessed to crimes they had never committed. Women named neighbors they barely knew. Children learned the sound of chains before they learned their letters. Truth dissolved under pressure, replaced by whatever words ended the pain fastest. Roderick received the transcripts. He read them all. He knew most were lies, but the machine could not stop. The more resistance he crushed, the faster it spread. The Free Banner began coordinating strikes across districts, burning storehouses, freeing prisoners, assassinating officials of the Iron Court. The Watch answered with mass arrests. The prisons overflowed. New cells were carved beneath the old council hall. One night, a bomb of black powder tore through the western garrison, killing 2 captains and scattering the Watch across the square. Roderick closed the entire district. He ordered every male over the age of 15 detained for questioning. The next morning, the square ran red. The city did not break. It hardened. Roderick stood on the balcony as smoke drifted through the streets and felt something he had not felt in years. Uncertainty. Chapter 8. The Walls Have Ears. Part 3. Fear has a breaking point. Roderick discovered it the night the bells of Varkarn rang without his order. At first, he thought it was a mistake, some watch captain panicking, some priest acting on old instinct. But when the bells did not stop, and when the sound began spreading from tower to tower across the city, he understood. This was not fear. This was a signal. From the rooftops of the lower districts, torches flared. From windows, white cloth was thrown into the streets, the mark of the Free Banner. Somewhere in the maze of alleys, a horn sounded, low and steady, and was answered by another. The people were no longer hiding. They were gathering. The Watch moved to intercept, but the streets themselves betrayed them. Barricades rose from overturned carts and shattered doors. Stones rained from above. In the chaos, prisoners were dragged from transport wagons and vanished into the smoke. By midnight, half the city was burning. Roderick watched from the citadel as the flames spread across the districts he had once fed, once promised to protect. For the first time since taking power, his orders arrived too slowly. His commands met confusion. His soldiers fought, but the city itself resisted. The machine he had built was cracking. And in that crack, the kingdom's voice returned. Chapter 9. The Necessary Blood. Part 1. By dawn, the smoke had turned the sun into a red coin hanging over the ruins of Varkarn. Roderick did not sleep. He stood in the high war chamber with his generals, the map of the city spread before them, charcoal marks scarring the parchment where districts had fallen into open rebellion. The Free Banner controlled the river quarter, most of the lower market, and 3 bridges. The Watch still held the citadel, the upper ward, and the eastern gate. "Retake the river," one general urged. "If we lose the docks, we lose the grain." Roderick nodded. "Use the heavy companies." Another hesitated. "There will be civilian losses." Roderick's voice was flat. "There already are." By mid-morning, the Crown's forces advanced in formation, shields locked, pikes forward. They moved street by street, pushing the rebels back with disciplined violence. The Free Banner fought like men with nothing left. From rooftops, from doorways, from the shadows of their own burning homes. Women carried water and stones. Children ran messages. Old men dragged the wounded into cellars. When the fighting reached the river stairs, the order was given. The heavy companies fired. Black powder thundered. Stone shattered. The river turned dark with blood and ash. By nightfall, the docks were reclaimed. Thousands were dead. Roderick rode through the lower districts at dusk, passing corpses and collapsed walls and the broken remains of barricades. The people watched him from doorways, their faces no longer afraid. They were empty. He returned to the citadel, knowing what he must do next. The realm could not survive another uprising, so he chose the only answer left to him: the necessary blood. Chapter 9: The Necessary Blood. Part 2. That night, Roderick signed the Crimson Writ. It was a single sheet of parchment, unadorned, sealed with the Iron Crown's mark. Its language was brief, precise, and merciless. It granted the generals and the Iron Court full authority to eliminate all persons, families, and holdings deemed complicit in sedition, resistance, or obstruction of royal order. No trials, no appeals, no limits. The purge began before the ink had dried. Watch columns fanned across the city, guided by lists compiled over months. Doors were broken in, names were called, men were dragged from beds, women were seized in doorways, children clung to cloaks and were thrown aside. In the river quarter, entire tenements were cleared by torch and steel. Outside the capital, the writ spread like a storm. Villages that had sheltered rebels were erased, fields were salted, wells were fouled. Along the western highlands, the Free Banner's hidden routes were burned to ash. Their mountain refuges collapsed with black powder and fire. For 3 weeks, the kingdom bled. Roderick remained in the citadel, receiving reports, countersigning orders, refusing food more often than not. When sleep came, it brought no rest. He saw the faces of Ashmere, of Haldenridge, of the boy in the court. He woke with the crown's weight pressing down, even when it lay across the chamber on its stand. On the 22nd day, a general knelt before him, helm tucked beneath his arm, armor streaked with soot. "The resistance is broken," the man said. "There will be no more uprisings this season." Roderick closed his eyes. The necessary blood had been paid. The realm was quiet again. But the silence was not the same as before. It was the silence of a graveyard after the storm has passed. Chapter 9: The Necessary Blood. Part 3. The kingdom did not rejoice. There were no banners, no songs, no celebrations of victory. There were only funerals. In the weeks that followed the Crimson Writ, the cities emptied. Trade slowed. Entire villages vanished from the tax rolls. The roads became quiet not because they were safe, but because no one was left to travel them. Roderick rode through the countryside under heavy guard and saw the results of his command: burned fields, collapsed homes, graves dug too quickly and too shallow. The Free Banner was gone, but so was the people's faith. When he returned to the capital, he found the city obedient and hollow. The markets were stocked, yet few came. The watch stood on every corner, but there was nothing left to suppress. In the Iron Court, his ministers began to fear him. In the temples, the priests began to pray against him. In the provinces, the whispers returned, not of rebellion, but of reckoning. Roderick had won every battle. he had lost his kingdom's soul, and somewhere deep beneath the crown's iron weight, he finally understood. The necessary blood had not saved the realm. It had doomed it. Chapter X. The Throne of the Absent. Part 1. Roderick ruled from the citadel, but he no longer ruled the people. Petitions still arrived. Taxes were still paid. Decrees were still obeyed. The machine of the kingdom functioned perfectly, efficiently, without complaint. And yet, the realm felt empty. The halls of the citadel echoed now. The Iron Court sat in near silence. Ministers spoke only when spoken to. No one brought new ideas. No one argued. They simply executed orders and waited. Roderick spent his days alone. He reviewed reports. He signed parchments. He stared at the map. He sent armies where there were no longer enemies. He built walls around cities that no longer resisted. At night, he walked the galleries above the sleeping city and wondered when the last time had been that someone had spoken to him without fear. He could not remember. The people no longer cursed him. They no longer praised him either. They had simply withdrawn. Chapter X. The Throne of the Absent. Part 2. The fractures began quietly. First, the treasurers reported irregularities, missing silver, delayed caravans, provincial accounts that no longer matched the ledgers of the capital. Roderick ordered audits. The numbers improved for a time, then slipped again. The realm was obeying, but it was no longer giving. Then came the governor's letters. Not open rebellion, not defiance, resignations. Men who had once sworn their lives to the Iron Crown now begged to be relieved of their posts, claiming illness, exhaustion, the needs of family. Roderick denied them all. A kingdom, he believed, could not afford the weakness of choice. So they remained, and quietly withdrew their will. In the countryside, local militias stopped patrolling at night. In the ports, dockmasters slowed the flow of goods without explanation. Even the watch began to show hesitation. Orders followed slowly, questions unasked but heavy in the air. Roderick summoned his generals. "Why does the realm hesitate?" he demanded. One of them, old and scarred, answered him truthfully. "Because it no longer believes, my king." Roderick dismissed him. That night, standing alone in the throne chamber, Roderick touched the cold iron of his crown and whispered, "They have no right to stop believing." But the kingdom already had. Chapter X. The Throne of the Absent. Part 3. The first signs were economic. Coin vanished from the lower markets. Grain wagons arrived late. Dock crews worked only under guard. Taxes were delivered in partial shipments, accompanied by apologies and silence. Roderick ordered new levies. The response was slow. He demanded explanations. None came. Then the fires began. A customs office burned in the west, a barracks in the south. A grain store near the river collapsed after an accident with a lantern. Each incident was small. Each was followed by silence. No banners, no declarations, no slogans. But the message was unmistakable. The realm was no longer cooperating. Roderick summoned the Iron Court. "Find the leaders," he commanded. There were none. The resistance had no face, no name, no banner. It was the kingdom itself. That night, Roderick stood before the great window of the citadel and looked out over Varkarn. The city glowed softly under the moon, peaceful, silent, obedient. And for the first time, he was afraid. Not of rebellion, of emptiness. Chapter 11. The People Without a Voice. Part 1. The kingdom did not rise. It drifted. Farmers stopped planting beyond what they needed to survive. Merchants hoarded silver. Craftsmen worked only enough to meet the crown's demands. The great engine of Valarath slowed not through rebellion, but through exhaustion. Roderick issued new incentives. They failed. He threatened punishment. They endured. In the villages, people spoke less and listened more. They did not gather. They did not protest. They did not fight. They simply withdrew from the realm. The watch arrested hundreds in the cities. The prisons filled again. The Iron Court pronounced new sentences. Executions were carried out in the squares. The people watched and felt nothing. Roderick realized with growing horror that fear no longer moved them. The kingdom had become numb. Chapter 11. The People Without a Voice. Part 2. Indifference spread faster than fear ever had. In the capital, the gallows were no longer crowded. Executions passed without comment. The watch dragged prisoners through empty streets. The crowds that had once gathered now remained behind shuttered windows. Roderick sent envoys into the provinces to stir loyalty. They returned with nothing. The realm had not turned against him. It had turned away. One night, a governor from the north arrived unannounced, exhausted, his cloak dusted with ash. "My king," he said, "the people no longer listen. They no longer care. They will not rise for you. They will not rise against you. They simply endure." Roderick dismissed him, but the words followed him into his dreams. Chapter 11. The People Without a Voice. Part 3. Roderick made one final attempt to reclaim the kingdom's heart. He ordered a great assembly in Varkarn. For the first time since his coronation, he would stand before the people without soldiers lining the steps, without the Iron Court beside him, without the language of decree and punishment. He instructed the watch to keep its distance. He commanded the city gates opened. Messengers rode for days into the surrounding provinces, calling every citizen who still cared for Valarath to come and hear their king. On the morning of the assembly, the western plaza filled slowly, not with the thunder of hope that had once crowned him, but with tired feet, drawn faces, hollow eyes. Roderick stepped onto the old stone platform where his rise had begun. He spoke of the early days, of hunger, of chaos, of the promises he had made. He spoke of the wars he had ended, the roads he had built, the enemies he had crushed so the people could live in peace. He spoke for nearly an hour. When he finished, silence answered him. Not anger, not hatred, not rebellion. Silence. A woman in the front of the crowd finally spoke, her voice quiet, almost gentle. "My king, we are tired. Nothing more." The people turned away and began to leave. No one shouted. No one protested. No one knelt. They simply walked back to their lives. Roderick remained on the platform long after the plaza had emptied, staring at the stones where his power had been born. And in that moment, he understood. He no longer ruled a kingdom. He ruled a memory of one. Chapter 12. The City Besieged. Part 1. The siege did not come from an army. It came from absence. Caravans stopped arriving. The river ran empty. The roads fell silent. The capital of Valorath, heart of the realm, began to starve. Roderick ordered the gates sealed, believing the threat came from outside. But the threat was within. The countryside no longer sent food. The provinces no longer paid taxes. The governors stopped responding to summons. Varkarn became an island. By the second month, bread was rationed. By the third, the lower districts were hollow with hunger. The Watch enforced order, but its ranks were thinning. Desertions grew. The Iron Court worked by candlelight as the treasury collapsed. From the citadel walls, Roderick watched the city wither. He had conquered every enemy, except the people. Chapter 12. The City Besieged. Part 2. By midsummer, the city was dying. Children collapsed in the streets. Old men traded family heirlooms for crusts of bread. The Watch abandoned patrols in the lower districts, unable to enforce laws no one could obey. Entire companies vanished into the night, their armor sold for food, their banners burned for warmth. Roderick ordered the final reserves opened. There was almost nothing left. The people no longer cursed him. They began to look at him. In the lower districts, the old symbol reappeared, the white banner slashed with black. This time, it was not whispered. It was raised openly. Chapter 12. The City Besieged. Part 3. The uprising began at dawn, not with fire, not with battle cries, with movement. From every district of Varkarn, people walked toward the citadel, dock workers, bakers, soldiers who had abandoned their posts, mothers carrying starving children, old men leaning on broken spears. They did not rush. They did not shout. They came as a tide. The remaining Watch attempted to form ranks at the inner gates. Half of them stepped aside. The gates were opened from within. When the crowd reached the outer court of the citadel, Roderick stood on the high steps, alone, the iron crown heavy on his brow, his guards already gone. The people stopped before him. They did not kneel. They did not shout. They waited. Chapter 13. The Night of Chains. Part 1. Roderick looked upon the crowd and saw no hatred. That was the most terrifying part. They stood in silence, thousands of them, faces thin from hunger, eyes steady with a resolve that no decree could command and no army could suppress. He searched for leaders, for banners, for some symbol of the resistance he had hunted for years. There were none. The kingdom itself had come. Behind him, the great doors of the citadel remained open. No soldiers waited in the shadows. No banners hung from the towers. The Iron Court had fled before dawn. Roderick descended the steps alone. His boots echoed on the stone. When he reached the front of the crowd, an old man stepped forward. His hands trembled, but his voice did not. "You ruled us with fear," the man said. "We answered with silence. Now we answer with truth." Roderick did not reply. Another voice followed, then another. They spoke of children lost to hunger, of fathers taken in the night, of villages erased. No one shouted. They spoke as if reading the history of the kingdom aloud. When they finished, the old man raised a length of chain. "This is how your reign ends. Chapter 13. The Night of Chains. Part 2. The chains were placed on Roderick's wrists without struggle. The iron was cold. The weight was real. He did not resist. As they bound him, the crowd parted, forming a long, silent path from the steps of the citadel down into the heart of the city. Torches were lit, not in rage, but in witness. The people did not strike him. They did not spit. They simply walked him through the streets he had once ruled, past the burned market, past the empty granaries, past the gallows he had raised. Roderick felt every stone beneath his feet. At the Western Plaza, they stopped. The same stones where he had promised them bread. The same place where his power had been born. They fastened the chains to the old pillar and stepped back. Roderick stood alone. The night closed around him. Chapter 13. The Night of Chains. Part 3. Roderick stood bound beneath the open sky as the torches burned low. The city did not sleep. From the edges of the plaza, the people watched him, not as a king, not as an enemy, but as the last living shadow of a long nightmare. Some wept, some stared, some turned away, unable to bear the sight of the man who had once promised them a future. Roderick lifted his head. For the first time in years, no one feared him. The realization struck deeper than any blade. At dawn, the chains were unlocked. Not to free him, to move him. Chapter 14. The Fall of the Tyrant. Part 1. They did not build a scaffold. They did not raise a throne. They cleared the Western Plaza and placed a single wooden chair at its center. Roderick was led through the city as the sun rose, the chains dragging softly over the stones. The people filled the streets and rooftops. No soldiers stood between him and them. No banners marked the moment. This was not the fall of a king. It was the return of a voice. When Roderick reached the chair, he sat. The old man from the night before stepped forward again. "The kingdom remembers," he said, "and today it speaks." Chapter 14. The Fall of the Tyrant. Part 2. They did not shout their accusations. They recited them. One by one, voices rose from the crowd. A mother spoke of a son taken by the watch and never returned. A farmer named the village erased in the west. A merchant described the night his home burned under the crimson writ. A soldier admitted to following orders that had shattered his own soul. Each voice carried a fragment of the kingdom's broken memory. Roderick listened. He did not interrupt. When the final voice faded, the old man raised his hand. "What say you, Roderick of Valerath?" Roderick lifted his eyes. "I wanted to save it." The crowd did not answer, because they already had. Chapter 14. The Fall of the Tyrant. Part 3. The verdict was not shouted. It was not written. It was not spoken by any single mouth. It emerged from the silence. The old man stepped back. A woman placed a length of black cloth over Roderick's eyes. Another loosened the chains from the pillar and guided him to the edge of the plaza, where the stones fell away into the long drop of the western ravine. The same ravine where the city had once thrown its refuse, its dead, and the memory of old wars. Roderick felt the wind on his face. He did not resist. For a moment, just one. He remembered the boy he had been in the river quarter, counting grain he could not eat, dreaming of a kingdom that would never abandon its people. Then the hands at his back released him. The crowd did not cheer. They closed their eyes. When they opened them, the iron crown lay on the stone, cracked where it had struck the edge, and Roderick was gone. Chapter 15. The Winter of the Kingdom. Part 1. The fall of Roderick did not bring instant peace. It brought winter, not only of snow, but of uncertainty. The Iron Court was dissolved before noon. Its chambers were sealed, its records dragged into the Western Plaza, and burned in great pyres that smoldered for 3 days. The crown was broken with hammers and thrown into the river, the dark water swallowing the last symbol of the old regime. But when the smoke cleared, the people stood in a kingdom without a throne. There were no governors, no council, no army loyal to any banner. Only a wounded land and 1 million survivors who did not yet know how to live without fear. Food was scarce. The granaries were nearly empty. The countryside was ash and frost. The cities were thin with hunger and disease. And yet, for the first time in years, the streets were filled with voices. People spoke again. They argued. They wept. They laughed in short, fragile bursts. In the Western Plaza, the same old man who had spoken for the people during Roderick's judgment gathered the crowd. "We must choose how we live now," he said, "or someone else will choose for us." No crown was raised. No single ruler was named. Instead, the people chose 12. Farmers, soldiers, merchants, healers, and teachers. To form the circle of renewal. Not to rule. To rebuild. Chapter 15. The Winter of the Kingdom. Part 2. Rebuilding was slower than destruction. The circle of renewal worked from dawn to dusk in the half-ruined council hall, wrapped in cloaks against the cold, hands stained with ink and ash. They issued their first decrees, not as commands, but as requests. For grain, for labor, for volunteers. And the people came. Farmers from the north brought seed from hidden stores. Fishermen returned to the river. Former soldiers dismantled the inner fortifications and began clearing the streets. The watch laid down its black armor and took up hammers and shovels. Not all wounds closed. There were nights of hunger, days of sickness, arguments that nearly broke the circle apart. But when tempers rose, no gallows stood in the square. Only voices. The kingdom was learning again. Chapter 15. The Winter of the Kingdom. Part 3. Spring arrived without ceremony. The snow melted from the broken walls. The river thawed. Green returned to the fields beyond the city, thin at first, then stronger with each passing week. The markets filled slowly. Children returned to the streets, chasing one another through the same alleys where soldiers had once marched in silence. The circle of renewal stood in the Western Plaza and announced the end of the emergency laws. The camps beyond the gates were dismantled. Prison doors were opened. Names were erased from the old lists. The kingdom was not whole, but it was alive, and it was free. Chapter 16. The March of the People. Part 1. The first march was not for war. It was for memory. From the villages of the West, from the burned valleys of Ashmere, from the river quarter of Varkarn, people began to walk the old roads again. They carried no weapons. They carried names, written on scraps of cloth, carved into wood, painted on torn banners. They walked to the places where the kingdom had broken. They placed the names in the soil. The march spread. By summer, tens of thousands moved across Valarath, unarmed, unafraid, reclaiming fields, rebuilding homes, standing together where once they had hidden alone. The free banner was folded and buried in the earth. It was no longer needed. Chapter 16. The March of the People. Part 2. From the march was born the Covenant of the Free. Representatives from every province gathered in the open fields west of Varkarn. There were no walls, no guards, no thrones. Only people seated in circles, speaking until the stars appeared and the fires burned low. They wrote the covenant together. No crown would ever rule Valarath again. No army would answer to a single hand. No law would stand without the consent of those it governed. The Circle of Renewal laid down its authority. The kingdom chose itself. Chapter 17. The Last Decree. Part 1. The last decree was not written on parchment. It was spoken. In the western plaza, where Roderick had once promised bread and where the Iron Crown had shattered on stone, the people gathered again. Not in fear, not in hunger. In open daylight with children on shoulders and tools at their belts, as if this were simply another task of rebuilding. From the Circle of Renewal, the old man stepped forward one final time. "There will be no more kings in Valarath," he said. "No throne that stands above the people. No crown that outlives their will." The words carried over the square and out into the streets, where open windows and open doors let them pass unchallenged. Messengers repeated them in every district. Riders carried them beyond the city before sunset. The decree spread faster than any law ever had. That night, the last royal seal was melted in a common forge and poured into the foundation of the new council hall. The metal hissed as it cooled, losing forever the shape it once held. Valarath closed the book of its old world. Chapter 17. The Last Decree. Part 2. Not everyone accepted the end of the crown. In the southern hills, remnants of the old houses gathered under broken banners, calling for the restoration of true rule. They marched with rusted armor and stolen grain, believing the people would rise for them as they once had for Roderick. They were wrong. Villages closed their gates, farms refused them food. The roads themselves turned against them. When they reached the outskirts of Varkarn, they found no army waiting, only the people. Farmers, former soldiers, masons, fishermen, mothers with knives at their belts and children standing behind them. The remnants of the old world turned back, and the new world remained. Chapter 18. The Night of the New Dawn. Part 1. For the first time in a generation, the kingdom slept. Not behind barred doors, not beneath watchtowers, not in fear of the next decree, but in quiet. The fires of Varkarn burned low and warm. Music drifted through open windows. The river carried laughter instead of ashes. Along the roads of Valarath, families camped beneath the stars, without guards or permits or whispered plans of escape. In the western plaza, children played where gallows had once stood. The old man of the Circle of Renewal walked alone through the city and wept. Not from sorrow, from relief. Chapter 18. The Night of the New Dawn. Part 2. At sunrise, the bells rang again, not as warning, not as command, as remembrance. Across the kingdom, people gathered in the places where the old world had broken. They planted trees where villages had burned. They carved names into stone where graves lay unmarked. They spoke aloud the stories that had once been whispered in cellars and prisons. Children asked who Roderick had been. The elders answered without hatred. They told them of a man who wanted to save the world and instead nearly destroyed it. They told them of a people who lost themselves and then found one another again. The kingdom wrote its memory in daylight. Chapter 19. The Day of the People. Part 1. The first day of the people was declared 1 year after the fall of the Iron Crown. No banners of conquest were raised. No statues of heroes were carved. Instead, every road into Varkarn filled with families arriving on foot, on wagons, on horses, carrying food, tools, music, and stories. The Western Plaza became a living map of the kingdom. Farmers beside merchants, soldiers beside healers, children beside elders. There were no rulers on the platform, only speakers. They spoke of the winter, of the hunger, of the fear, and of the moment the people had chosen themselves. At noon, every bell in Valarath rang, not for a king, for the kingdom. Chapter 19. The Day of the People. Part 2. At sunset, the names were read, not of the powerful, not of the rulers, but of the lost. Children stood beside the elders and spoke them aloud. The farmers of Ashmere, the families of Haldenridge, the prisoners of the Iron Court, the villages erased from the map. No one was forgotten. When the final name was spoken, the crowd fell silent. And then, without instruction, without signal, they began to sing. Not an anthem, not a battle song. A simple tune, old as the fields, once sung at harvest, and nearly lost to the years of fear. The sound carried across the city and out into the dark. Valarath had chosen who it was. Chapter 20. The Day of Freedom. Part 1. The sun rose over a different kingdom. There were no soldiers at the gates of Varkarn, no watchtowers scanning the roads, no seals pressed into wax that decided where a man could walk or what he could say. The people woke to birdsong instead of commands. Across Valarath, fields were green again. The rivers carried boats, not ash. Markets opened with laughter. Children ran unafraid beneath open sky. In the Western Plaza, the same stones where Roderick had once promised bread, and where his crown had shattered, now held a simple circle of benches. The circle of renewal, gathered there one last time and formally dissolved itself. The kingdom belongs to the people, the old man said. It always did. No crown replaced the old one. No throne was built. Instead, the people of Valarath walked back into their lives, free.